Hey everybody, welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby, and of course, this show is all about interviewing and chatting with small nonprofits doing great big things. We got a great one for you today, and I'm super excited. Trey Coley is with us. He's the Executive Director of, let me get this straight, Abendmusik at First-Plymouth. We're going to get to what that is in a second because it's really, really interesting on an inclusive music program that I think you're going to love. And again, I am super excited. This has been a long time coming, Trey. I'm super excited for you to be on the show. Welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So people are looking through their social feed. They're looking through their YouTube page. They're looking at Abendmusik, and the spelling is weird, and we're going to talk about that. Give somebody who is really interested in what you do but doesn't know exactly what you do a 5,000-foot view on what your organization does and how you came up with the name in the first place.
Absolutely. So Abendmusik is a nearly half-century-old performing fine arts organization. We are what's called a presenting organization, meaning we bring in ensembles and acts throughout our season. We have a fall and spring lineup. We have a historic partnership with First-Plymouth Church here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I want to pause and note the name, Abendmusik at First-Plymouth. First-Plymouth Church is one of Lincoln, Nebraska's largest congregations. And again, nearly 50 years ago, one of the music ministers thought at the time, we can do more with our music ministry and outreach. And so our genesis was really based in outreach and community unity. And so at that time, we started as a music ministry with the name Abendmusik, which I am not a German speaker, but it effectively means evening music, music of the evening. And it was intended as a time to complement with a concert series what the church itself was doing. And so it existed for those first 10 years sort of in that format. And we do count those first 10 years as a key part of our history. In 1981, someone wisely suggested to the then board that we should incorporate and reap the benefits, large and small, of being a nonprofit entity. And I want to define what those benefits are. I think for anyone in our sector, it's not just having that IRS tax exemption letter. It's being known as a nonprofit program. It's interfacing with your peers. It's interfacing with other arts organizations. And effectively, from 1981 since, we have been one of the Midwest's premier fine arts performing organizations. A season typically for us includes collegiate ensemble. So this last year we brought in Iowa State, for example. Every season, however, also includes a particular theme upon which we try to focus. And so this last year, meaning the year that we just ended, we focused upon the theme of unity, but as specifically espoused through the ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mm-hmm. And so we did a couple of things. We had a performance titled The Light of Unity that brought several ensembles together under one literal roof. Our performance hall is First-Plymouth Church itself. But I think that the most amazing and coolest example of what Abendmusik does and has as an impact was the American Spiritual Ensemble. We brought this amazing 25-year-old ensemble from Kentucky, and that ensemble itself specifically focuses upon, promotes, and performs classics from the American spiritual tradition, that genre that is so vital and underappreciated and understudied. They also perform lesser-known standards. So that example sort of underscores how Abendmusik operates. We see music as a way to bring people together. Ultimately, I've been with the organization for almost 2 years, and I continue to learn and grow in the role every day. And I'm grateful for what Abendmusik brings to our community and our Midwest region.
May I make a brief suggestion on next year's theme, resiliency? Because it's really what I think everyone would understand that that's a really easy and conceptual team. Like, so how in a COVID-19 world where you are not gathering in large numbers at the church and you're not performing, and really how does your performance, because I think art organizations are experiencing this all over the place, virtual tours on museums and it's virtual performances here and there. How did COVID and how is it affecting kind of your performance schedule this year? And what do you do about it?
That's such a key question because it seems nuanced, but it I think has had a different answer at different points throughout the last 5 months for us as an organization. The bottom line is, though, because we have that historic affiliation with First-Plymouth Church, the church itself is our performance hall. unless there's a rare exception where we've performed off-site. And again, that's not as common. But everything we do and every decision we make is based in the logistics of partnering with that amazing congregation. But to the point, every January and every February, I'm sitting down with Abendmusik's artistic director, Tom Trini, who's been with the organization for a decade and is in many ways the public face of the organization, very talented, very visionary. But he and I sit down together, and our fiscal year, like many FYs, starts July 1st, ends June 30th. So January, February, Tom and I sit down and I say, okay, Tom, what are you thinking about for the artistic lineup? He tells me the theme, the season, and at that point, he's been in contact with providers of artistic content for maybe 6 months up to 2 years, depending. So we lay out the season, and then it's my job as executive director to start to put together a budget, work with Tom as artistic director to line everything up. I offer that background because coming into February and coming into March, Tom and I had a budget that we were set to take to the board, and the goal is always to have the board to look at it in April and have it approved by May. Needless to say, in March, everything changed in the world due to COVID-19. And so we immediately sat down and said, let's just hit the pause button and see where the pandemic goes or doesn't go over the first month. And over that first month, we became keenly aware that there was no way that we were going to be able to gather anyone in concert as we normally would. So everything we'd laid out in terms of an actual performance season, and I cannot emphasize enough how key those details are, Patrick, from contracts being signed to artistic income to guest artists and residents who reside in New York City but might need to fly in Lincoln, and they depend on this income. We effectively had to completely overhaul our planned 2020-2021 season. And typically our season starts around September, ends in May, and sometimes we have some summer programming. But Tom and I sat down and said, let's start from scratch. And Tom is admittedly much more of a planner. He likes to have everything detailed out. I'm okay with a little bit of flexibility, certainly not the type that we've had to have due to the pandemic. But right. We said, let's make the decision that we will have no in-person concerts from here till a certain amount of time. And so we talked with our board, and as things started to go, and as we looked at our audience demographics, and like many performing arts organizations, our audience, our amazing audience, isn't always, but largely steers more towards senior citizens. Again, that's probably the majority. So we had to think about what that meant for public health and what that meant for public health protocol and what that meant for our local state and municipality here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so the bottom line was by May, we had worked with our board to say, we will not be having any concerts from now till 2021 that are in person. Every concert we do is going to be remote, digital, online. And that was a complete change. Thankfully, we were able to still keep some of our Cadillac programming. And by that, I mean, we do certain things that every year are Abendmusik known in the Lincoln community. Our Christmas celebration, our New Year's Eve celebration, we still wanted to keep, and this is really important as I answer your question, we still wanted to keep what makes us unique. We still wanted to keep our mission in front of us, but we also wanted to recognize the challenge of where we're at. So we also, as we thought about monthly programming, said, let's start in June with a monthly concert upload. Let's, in some cases, reuse some of our former concert that we have, and we have a decade-plus archived video store, so we are very lucky in that regard. But we said, let's, when we upload a concert event, let's not just replay. Let's have a conversation with it. Let's have a person talking about as an intro what this is and why we're doing it now. And so that became our business model. We worked with a videographer to especially produce a unique video upload. And as we were looking at the budget, and you're sensing a theme here, we started to say, what happens if we make every single concert event free to the public, which is not normally our model. We try to make as many free as we can, but ticketed event income is a vital source of revenue for us. But we said, are we really being true to our mission if, in addition to being remote and digital and online, we're limiting that somehow? And we said, no, right now people need artistic content, they need inspiration, everything we believe music provides. So we decided to make everything free to the public. Corollary to that discussion, we started thinking about our own fiscal reality and how blessed we are to have been bequeathed an endowed fund in 2003. And I will note, it's not the amount of that endowment that particularly matters, but we started saying the phrase own our privilege needs to really come into this at some point, because we recognize a lot of nonprofit entities don't have an endowment, don't have major donors, don't have 50 years behind them, and don't have maybe the liquidity and solvency we do. And to be clear, it's not that we can exist for a million years at Abendmusik, sans income, but we started to think about trying to be a neighbor to our community, especially human service providers who themselves were doing amazing frontline work. So we decided that we would take no income from now till December 31st for any concert event, no matter what our expenses were, and that we would select, we being our staff team, a different nonprofit beneficiary agency in the community for every single concert event, and not just select them and ask that donations go to them, but feature them in our concert upload for 2 to 4 minutes, and a time for the agency to talk about their work, their mission, their programming, and how to donate to them. And then on our own Abendmusik website, we would have a donate button directing donations back to that beneficiary agency. And then finally, we decided to be truly sincere in our mission during the pandemic, that we would publicize and promote this partnership as much as possible, not for us to get praise, it's not why we're doing it, but to direct as many dollars as is humanly possible to the beneficiary agency. So we had that business model, and we said, this is something we're feeling good about with the FY starting July 1st. We're being a good partner to the nonprofit community in Lincoln, Nebraska, because we're able to do it. And at some point, our team started to say, well, you know, what's a good way to be a neighbor to the for-profit community, which is itself struggling, and localism truly matters right now. Local businesses are going under, local business owners are losing income. So we said, you know what? Advertising revenue for any nonprofit agency that is in the fine arts is key. Anytime you go to an event, you get the program booklet, and as you flip through the back, you see all the advertisers. We've always had great relationships with our advertisers. And again, that's a not insubstantial source of revenue. But we said, what if in this brave new world where we're still going to have advertising and we're still going to have a program booklet, it'll be an online PDF. What if we don't sell any new ads, quote unquote, unless an entity really just wants to advertise with us? But we renew all of our last season advertisers at the exact same level at no cost and with the exact same benefit from here till December 31st of 2020. And we talked about it, we said that makes sense. So we went back to our budget before the board passed it. We had zeroed out ticketed event income by that point. We zeroed out effectively all of our advertising income for the remainder of this calendar year. And we donated that time and effort effectively to our advertisers, our corporate sponsors. And I want to pause and say, we exist as an organization because of our advertisers, our partners, our corporate sponsors. And so again, we're not doing this for any praise or for any merit. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And it's one less expense, hopefully, our local business partners will have. So at the end of all of this, when you ask me how COVID affected Abendmusik in Lincoln, Nebraska, it not only meant a complete overhaul of our season, it not only meant a complete overhaul of our budget, but for us, it's been a wonderful overhaul of business as usual in a way that's allowing us, frankly, to support the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector and try to be a good neighbor and do our part. So that's what this time has been for us. And it's been an amazing time of learning and of growth and of reflection.
It's really interesting that COVID has had two distinct versions of effect. One, tragic scramble and high pressure on business owners and nonprofits, et cetera. The other one is COVID creative, where organizations are either taking a look internally and go, okay, this is a reality. Now we got to move within it. And I hate using the word pivot, but that's kind of what people do. And the creative juices that have flown from those who take a step back and say, how can we go and give back, or how can we make impact, is really, really interesting. I love the way that you guys have positioned yourself, not only as somebody just to recognize everybody who has given you the opportunity to perform for the last however many years, however, and then use it for good to spread, you know, the love back to the community by which you serve and you live in. The one thing that I think people will get and reflect on, I'm pretty positive about this, is that at the end of this, whenever that is, they're going to look back on the arts and music in particular as the savior entity that got them through this from their mental health. And whether that is watching a performance or listening to a music or listening to a podcast or watching a movie or watching a film or watching a play, whatever that is, whatever arts piece it is, that's going to be the thing they remember most is I watched this with my family, or we experienced this together. And there's a reason that Hamilton's popular again. And there's a reason that you get those YouTube performances. I hadn't watched Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in 20 years. And then all of a sudden they replayed it on YouTube. And I was like, I forgot how much I freaking love this. Like, that brings me back to my childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And those musical performances, I think, are the ones that are going to get us through the whole darker times. And I think that's the reason why an organization like yourself recognizing the reality and sort of adjusting on the fly is such an amazing turn of events, even in this sort of tragic, holy crap, I can't believe this is happening to us globally sort of movement. And I mean to follow up with that question too, is organizations of any size, especially in a pandemic, have big audacious goals they still want to approach and reach. What's Abendmusic's sort of goal that's audacious, even in itself, more than what you've already laid out, which is accepting sort of the reality and helping nonprofits? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal you've got sitting there in the end of the year, even into 2021?
I think that's something that any nonprofit leader and any nonprofit organization has asked themselves. Before I provide the direct answer, I want to know, you said at the top of the podcast, as you do for every discussion, that this is a great realm for small nonprofits. Our annual operating budget, now that I've talked about what we did, it's under $200,000.
Yeah.
Our endowment was bequeathed to us in 2003 by, as we jokingly say, someone that we didn't even know of or have on our radar at the time. It wasn't a board member, it wasn't a major donor, which proves the point that the arts touch people's lives. This was something that just kind of came to us serendipitously. And so I want to make the point before I tell you what our long-term goal is, that we're not operating from a scarcity of resources model. We're operating from a partnership model. To answer your point though, our long-term goal has been a ticketless season. And is that not ironic? Because I just told you that we forced ourselves to say, we're not going to take any income. We're going to make all of our video concert uploads free from now till December 31st. Every fiscal year, every program year, every season, we've had this great conversation about, well, how close are we to getting ticketless? How close are we to having a completely free season? And we usually have, understandably, the discussion about expenses and, well, let's make this percentage of events, maybe 40% will be ticketed revenue this season. So we've been having this fascinating discussion, and it's been a healthy discussion. And so that is our long-term goal, is to offer artistic content that is high caliber, that unites the community at no cost, because that is truly outreach for us. So that's our long-term goal. And it's not lost on us that we're there in the midst of a pandemic. But I want to be clear, the long-term goal in the pandemic discussion were variables in the boardroom and staff team discussions. We didn't make this because that's a long-term goal. It's just here we are as a fascinating point. So I think we're going to leave the pandemic saying, you know what, it's not as hard as we believe to get to a ticketless season, which is our long-term goal. Look at what we did in the last 6 months of 2020. It's been a fascinating nuance.
I know. I think it's ironic that a lot of nonprofits are looking at themselves going, oh, I guess we could pull some of this kind of stuff off.
Right, exactly.
And they use the excuse of we didn't have enough time, or we didn't have enough energy, or we didn't have the position to do X, Y, and Z. Now you're forced into a box, and all of a sudden it becomes a little clearer on that priority list of things that you didn't need to do in the first place. And all of a sudden you're now making massive impact in there as well. One of the things, and we talked about doing things differently, because I think that is really what you do best, is how do you gauge performances and invest in sort of these missions of partnerships and really getting themes. That's really interesting. Documented successes, though, I think is really an interesting piece to this podcast, which is what sort of performances did you have recently or look back on and say, listen, of all the things that we did, this stuck out as a thing on paper that maybe didn't make sense, but holy hell, did it come back and just be awesome as a successful performance and the impact by which it was made?
Well, I love your question, because I full disclosure, I spent a nearly 15 career span in the human services nonprofit realm before I came to the arts, and success measures are, and I'm not minimizing the difficulty of them, but they're things, to use homeless as an example, how many percentage of your program participants were permanently housed?
Right.
That's easy to list on a grant, easy to document. In the arts, to your point, it can't just be how many people came to your concert. Nope. It cannot just be that. So we started thinking at Abendmusik about impact probably 7 or 8 years ago, and trying to to have that as a goal, to show a mark of success. Once more, we could have concert numbers, who attended, what, when, but in terms of something that best illustrates a success indicator and something that people kind of struggle with on paper, but then in practice it was amazing. So I mentioned earlier the American Spiritual Ensemble concert that we had as part of our 2019-2020 season that ended this last May. That concert occurred over MLK weekend. And once more, the theme of unity and MLK's ideals were really our overarching principles for that season. So coming into the fall of 2019, I'd say, no, actually, it was the summer. It was the summer. The board and staff team sat down and said, is there more that we can do with this? We talk about impact, but what does impact really look like? We can have a concert where we detail the excellent work, life, tradition, legacy of MLK, but once that performance has happened, is it really going to be lasting? So we said, let's partner with a nonprofit program and think what we would want to offer. So we kind of went back and forth and thought, what nonprofit program in Lincoln, Nebraska has a mission that would perhaps align, at least from our perspective, with this vital concert of the American Spiritual Ensemble. And we quickly noted the Malone Community Center, which is an African-American community center that does amazing work, after-school programming, etc. And we thought, let's do something that not just benefits them financially, but programmatically. And here's where I need to pause, Patrick, because for me as a nonprofit professional, and certainly for Abendmusik, it's just our culture, we think that if we just come to the ubiquitous you and say, this is what we're going to do, that's not a real partnership. Partnership is based in discussion, dialogue, and talking about shared hopes and expectations. And so we did. Last summer, board representative and I met with a board representative from the Malone Center. They were going through an ED transition at the time, else the ED would have been there. And we just said, here's what we're thinking. Here's the concert series. What's important to you? And their board president said, everything we do is based in education. So let's flow from there. And from that came the concept of a youth choral ensemble that would be composed of Malone Center youth, the amazing youth who are there every day, wherein we provided the music, the rehearsals, the conductor, and the goal was to have these youth perform on stage for 2 or 3 songs of the American Spiritual Ensemble. And that's what happened. So that is our success indicator. That is impact. So the activities, right, were across the fall and then into early 2020. Those 3 rehearsals occurred. We did everything. We provided the piano, etc. At the concert, the youth performed, but the outcomes, and I think anyone who's written grants, right, we're always stressed on what's an output versus an outcome.
Oh, yeah.
The outcome was as follows. Arts education was provided to a program that didn't have that in their programming or their operations at no cost. That's number one. Number two, the Malone Center had partnered with Abendmusik and said, let's keep these rehearsals going. Our youth love this. Let's not just let that end then. And then finally, as far as a long-term outcome, representation really mattered in a substantive way. More specifically, 3 or 4 of the youth of this African-American youth ensemble said to us at the time that, quote, the people on stage look like us. They're part of our community. And Patrick, I have to tell you, in the classic music realm and the performance music realm, 9 times out of 10, the people on stage or on a promotional poster will look like you or I. And for those who haven't seen our photos, we're both, of course, Caucasian. So to have a child of color, a Black child in Lincoln, Nebraska, make that statement whilst being a part of the choir and then performing on stage, and then after the concert to want to get the autographs of the ensemble members, that is an outcome. That is something that is key. So that is a success indicator for Abendmusik, that long-term partnership, that belief that representation matters, and frankly, the planting of a seed for music appreciation and music literacy. That's an important part of what we do, and that has become how we measure our success. Innovative partnerships every season that have lasting on the ground footprints, impacts, and frankly, sustainability.
Nailed it. I like to talk about gratitude a lot, and you've listed off about a half a dozen individuals who just from a partnership standpoint deserve giant shout outs. But as a guest on the official Do Good Better podcast, I want to show my appreciation by helping you with a fundraising question. That's what I like to do the best. So how can I help you, Abendmusik, raise money, do funds, however, you ask a question, I'll do my best to give you an answer on how to help.
So, excellent. I've got my question lined up. It's about planned giving.
Ooh.
So I've told you the generalities of music. We're Abendmusik. We're nearly 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We had an endowed gift bequeathed to us, unbeknownst to us.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about planned giving. We certainly know of planned giving. We are starting to put the tagline that most nonprofits put and have put for years in their promotion materials about please remember us in your statement of decision making. But we know we've not advanced past that. We've not made planned giving a part of our operations, our programming, how we do business, how we sit down and talk with a donor about the importance of remembering us in estates. And I do want to say, as a donor, I firmly believe, right, that if you support an organization now, you're at increased likelihood to want to support it sustainably and long-term in the future. So I have no problems with the planned giving discussion, but here's my question in a nutshell. How does an organization evolve from comfort level of what planned giving is to comfort level of actual ongoing conversations with donors that have the end result of planned giving success? Where do we get and how do we go? That's my question.
Great question. And I think the hurdle is feeling comfortable having a question about death. And that is a very difficult question from any organization, but especially in art, right? So you want to bring joy, you want to bring happiness. And what does that sound like when you're talking about end of life or end of life issues? What I would start with the conversation is not necessarily about legacy giving. It's maybe a conversation using music as your muse for the conversation. What song or what performance have you not heard in a while that you would love to keep going in the future? What performance, if it was locked away in a box and never heard from again, would be a detriment to the society and for culture as a whole? Starting to think about legacy questions is a real good leap into legacy conversations as it pertains to donations. Is there a fund that you can form, or is there conversations of, these are the type of performances that we do in honor of those who left us gifts in the future? If you left us a gift, what song would we be able to perform annually that would honor your memory and your impact? Because now you're connecting why they give in the first place, music and this passion for music and community, to what you can do to honor them forever and ever and ever and live on in perpetuity. That this goes to Barb and Ron, who graciously left, a portion of their, wealth in our realms. And we're doing this every single year to honor them on the day that they remember us, right? So how do you honor them? It's by simply having a question about what makes them, what brings them back to their youth, what brings them back to their wedding day, what brings them back to the day they graduated high school or college or had their first kid. What's that song? What's that performance? And I think that's the first conversation, but then building a unique and interesting opportunity that probably nobody's doing, right, is uniquely honoring those legacy givers with a performance that honors them for their gift going forward. And if you can develop a program like that, I think that's really, really going to be fun and unique.
Excellent feedback, Patrick. Thank you. Definitely food for thought. And what I love about your advice is it's actionable. It's not so sky high that it's purely philosophical. You're sticking to the mission of what this organization, Abendmusik, does. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the time today. Such a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, it's the absolute best. And again, this goes to a fundraising thing that I just believe in. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple and keep it to mission, keep it to impact. So, and again, we cannot stop the show because there's probably people listening here that are like, I love this impact. I love what you do. I want to help. They probably sit on a cash pile, or they've got sacks of money under their bed. I want them to give it to you. So how, Trey, can we give you all the money in the world? Give us an address and a phone number and an email and all the information on how we can give you as much money as possible to make maximum impact at Abendmusik. Go.
Happy to. So our mailing address is 2000 D Street, the letter D, 2000 D Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68502. I'll repeat that, 68502. Our website address is www.abendmusik.org, and I'll spell that one more time. A-B as in boy, E-N, D as in dog, M-U-S-I-K.org. Our phone number is 402-476-9933. Once more, 402-476-9933. And my email address is, in closing, trey@abendmusik.org. That's Trey, Trey, @abendmusik.org. And I thank anyone in advance for the generosity, and reach out anytime for any reason. If you just want to learn more about our history or just have a chat, we're open for that.
As always, we will put every bit of information into our show notes. Trey, it has been a pleasure. It's been a long time coming to be on the official Do Good Better podcast, and I appreciate you being a guest today. It's been absolutely fantastic. We'll chat with you soon. Bye, friends.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Bye.